On to our next speaker, who is a journalist, an author, and associate director of the foreign policy think tank, the Henry Jackson Society. He is a man who I think it's fair to say is never inclined to shy away from controversy, and he is Douglas Murray, who now has 6 minutes to make his case.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I agree with everything that my colleague David Aaronovitch has said, and I disagree with some of what Clive has said, and I'm not going to be as oppositional as perhaps you might wish on this. I will concede the same points that David did. This is not nice, it's not surgical, it's a mistake to think that this is some kind of abstract war game. It isn't. It involves real people and real people's lives. Terrorism exists, however, and the question is what you are going to do with it. Terrorism is a serious problem. There are people, there may even be people tonight who don't believe that. I think they're wildly mistaken, and I think apart from anything else, it's a great shame that Clive didn't mention the number of people who would have to take anti-anxiety medication because they live in an area dominated by jihadis. Nobody counts those people so much. You know, if terrorism exists, the question is, as I say, what do you do about it? Now, the Bush administration, immediately after 9/11, had one way of dealing with this. It decided that you would send in very large amounts of American troops. You would use all of your newest, latest military technology, but you would have boots on the ground. You would spend, in the case of both Iraq and Afghanistan, very many years caught up in local politics, local and tribal disputes, and many people lost their lives during that period. It was a response, and it did a very great amount of harm to the United States, and it also did a very great amount of harm to Al-Qaeda and others who wished the United States ill. Now, during that period, the Bush administration also took part in a policy of extraditing people in countries like Afghanistan to Guantanamo Bay. Bush himself authorized 3 individuals to be waterboarded, 3 known terrorists to be waterboarded. And I do not think that I'm alone in noticing that this policy was not widely popular. Among other things, not very popular with Clive Stafford Smith and other well-paid human rights lawyers. They have had, however, a terrific success with the response that they had. They have had a terrific result in that they have persuaded the most left-wing president in American history, Barack Obama, to skip the rendition and trials process and go straight for targeted assassination. So congratulations on that. Why is this the case? It's because the Obama administration came in and they saw what their predecessors saw, which was that the threat was real and that you had to do something about it. Now, the idea that the Obama administration is at all loose in how it does this is a mistake. Let me just quote the Attorney General, Eric Holder, who said recently at the Northwestern University School of Law, he said, talked about the criteria for using lethal force against people in this way. First, the US government has determined, after a thorough and careful review, that the individual poses an imminent threat of violent attack against the United States. Second, capture is not feasible. And third, the operation would be conducted in a manner consistent with applicable law of war principles. That is Obama's Attorney General. Now, there are, as I say, if we agree that the Bush policy didn't go down all that well, and if we think that drones have to go out of the equation, we have to then address, as Dave Aaronovitch also said, we have to address what are the other options. There are other options. You could, for instance, in the case of Pakistan, encourage the Pakistani government to send in the Pakistani army rather more liberally, shall we say. I offer it as an open question. You don't have to know anything about, for instance, the Red Mosque siege a few years ago in Pakistan. I offer it as a genuine offer. If you think that sending the Pakistani army into areas to arrest, kill, detain terrorists would be less bloodthirsty than unmanned drones, I think you're on some of the stuff that Clive was talking about. Let me give the example of Yemen. It hasn't come up very quickly, but very briefly, because it's connected to the place we're in. Not very far from here in London, a young student, Omar Farouk Abdul Muttalib, on Christmas Day 2009, tried to blow himself and the plane he was on up over Detroit. He tried to do that because of a man who was an American citizen then in Yemen, Anwar Awlaki. He was deemed not to be able to be arrested. Nobody had the opportunity to read his Miranda rights. He was an imminent threat. He had been trying and had on many occasions actually already succeeded in encouraging people to carry out terrorist attacks in the West. The Yemeni army had tried repeatedly to capture him and had failed. The only result of this was that an unmanned drone was the only way to end Awlaki's career. You know, Clive said hypocrisy breeds hatred. Look, lots of things breed hatred. I wish we could solve all the problems of the world. I wish there were no poverty. I wish there were no international disputes. I wish there were no border disputes, obviously. But until such a day, we need a range of options to deal with a threat that is not just imminent, but very, very widespread indeed. We have a range of options. Drones are an unpalatable part of them, but in the absence of better options, they're not only effective but moral as well, and the best way we have currently to hit the crocodile when it's nearest the boat. Thank you.